Here are 3 future smite damage commanders I would love to see in Rise of Kingdoms. First would be a Cav rally, either to fully replace Attila or to go directly alongside him. Having variety of damage sources is healthy for the meta and keeps the overall rallying garrison meta fluid, and Cavs could definitely use that damage variety to keep the pressure on and keep the rally meta healthy and varied. The second I would like to see is an archer garrison that does smite damage. This would be great to go alongside Dido, as well as going alongside Heraclius as well. But having an archer garrison overall that does a ton of smite damage and normal attack damage would be refreshing in the skill damage heavy archer meta and give something alternative for the archers. Last, but certainly not least, I would love to see a smite based leadership garrison. Due to the fact that Heraclius is so recent, I imagine this is quite some time out, but a leadership garrison to go with Hera that make a swarm resistant monster garrison would be quite refreshing to see. It would provide a great variety of defense options. Here are the 3 most dominant commanders in the current meta. First, we have Heraclius. This guy is still ridiculously solid, Lapulapu or not, and will continue to be in his insane normal attack damage reduction, shield, and general versatility. Second is Nevsky. The oldest commander on this list, Nevsky has been around for years and is an absolute monster. It really shows that many commanders' viability are still determined and gauged, at least to some point, by their ability to counter or complement Nevsky in whatever role they fulfill. Last, but certainly not least, is Asher. Asher has the ability to chew up enemy defenses with relative ease while he's great both 1v1 and against Swarm, making both options dangerous to attempt to counter him. Having to choose between swarming him and taking severe damage, or waiting him out in garrison and desperately holding on for dear life as he mauls your defensive capabilities. This is the Lapulapu Commander Review. Lapulapu is the newest garrison in Rise of Kingdoms and has a solid kit with a huge AoE, good damage sustain, and is only really weak to Swarm, individually having really high vulnerability to it. For talents, I recommend a full investment in the skill tree, the standard 3 talents in garrison, and the remainder of the points going into leadership tree for value. For formations, Wedge is the best individually for him. However, you can change the formation to match the other half of his pairing for minimal punishment to him directly. For pairings, he'll pair best with commanders that covers vulnerability and fragility, like Gorgo, Dido, and Yan, and can even run one troop type to only lose 10% defense and health to do so. Additionally, Hera would make a great pairing with the double AoE and stacking skill damage. For meta fits, he'll do best in large buildings where swarm can be minimized, such as passes, but will also do well in forts and flags when you have field control. Welcome to a new series called Boom or Bust, where I cover commanders and whether they're booms or busts relative to what their pre-release expectations were. In today's video, we have Heraclius and Honda. First, Heraclius is a huge boom. Heraclius came out with a ton of mixed sentiment, myself included. The kit didn't look like it might synchronize well, and I had moments where I thought he might not even be very useful or even skippable. And boy, has Hera gone on to make me regret those words. He's great, and he'll probably continue to be for quite some time. Next, Honda is a slight boom. Honda has met with typical leadership commander skepticism, and as many of those leadership commanders end up being outright bad, Honda isn't game-breaking, but he's certainly cut himself out a very nice niche, and exceeding his release expectations gives him a very slight boom status. With the rise of fully leadership garrisons, leadership equipment is back to the forefront, and the stat output these can give can make a huge difference filling non-piece stats as well as full sets. But where are they good and where are they not? First, where leadership gear is great. Of course, in fully mixed defenses like Lapulapu Hera and Hera YSS, leadership gear is a must because it gives total unit flexibility and helps overall keep the flexibility wide open and not run your kingdom short of a specific troop type in a defense and sustained fighting. However, the downside of this is that the equipment's harder to acquire for more established players, who are more likely to be garrisons, while the specialization to optimize the gear would fall under leadership, which limits its use to pretty much garrisons where other gear can be used in field, garrison, and rally, making it less than ideal value for many players. However, the ultimate decision is yours, as leadership gear may just be here for a long time. Welcome to another episode of Museum Relics Reviewed in Rise of Kingdoms. First, we have Ragnar, who at rank 2 gets a very respectable 35% defense and 15% normal attack damage taken reduction. While the relic itself is good and makes him significantly tankier, because he doesn't have a decent damage factor on any of his skills, and you lose a skill to the rally-based skill, which you're not going to be using him as a primary in rally anyway, it really can't pull him out of irrelevancy for gold key commanders, getting him a B-. While the execution was good, it just was not enough to make him supremely relevant among gold key commanders. Next, we have Thutmose, who gets a 25% attack and 20% health bonus at Relic Tier 2. This actually has a great effect, as he doesn't get a ton of direct stat bonus from his passive skills, so Relic gives him some extra survivability and damage to his passive heavy kit and gets an A- from me. Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, where I cover commanders and whether they're booms or busts versus their pre-release expectations. In today's video, we're covering Bertrand and Asher. First, Bertrand is a pretty heavy bust. Bertrand was met with a good amount of enthusiasm for his release. After all, he was the newest Cav commander and a rally leader at that. But given now what we know about Nevsky, Bertrand was doomed from the start. The sheer value Nevsky gives has absolutely doomed Bertrand, and we are left thinking of what could have been had the Nevsky meta not captivated cavalry players everywhere, or if he was released alongside a different commander. Next, Asher has been a major boom so far. The reviews for Asher have been super positive, even with some skepticism about his expertise being fairly inconsistent. But so far, he has hushed many doubters, as he is dangerous both 1v1 and against Swarm, forcing defenders into tough decisions and helping to bring cavalry garrisons back to the forefront of the meta. Here are the best current daily chess commanders with the release of Amani and Gilgamesh. Note that I'll only include one for each troop type to help each specialty build better. First, for cavalry, we have William. William is still a premier support, and when paired with Twill or Nevsky, you'll get insane value at only 5511 or 5551. If you manage that bulky AoE, he pays dividends for you and anybody who sticks close to you. Next, for archers, we have Nebu. While he isn't what he used to be, he's still strong and a great free-to-play option, and you can run him at incomplete skill ranks as well, giving good mobility and great value with a solid AoE. Lastly, for infantry, we have Zenobia. I would even go so far as to say that Zenobia is the only majorly viable infantry commander on this chess list, as Guan doesn't do a ton in the current meta versus others, and pretty much the other commanders aren't great, while Zenobia is a major heavy hitter even right now in the current Garrison meta. Welcome to another episode of Museum Relics Reviewed. In this episode we have Edward and Pyrrhus. First we have Edward. Edward gets a 10% defense and 150 damage factor to his skill with no tier 2 relic level. This is an alright relic, it's just not nearly enough survivability or anything to help make him justifiably usable in the field. It would definitely yield much better results at tier 2, and if the damage factor were replaced with damage reduction or counterattack damage, placing this relic at a plain C. Next we have Pyrrhus, who gets 30% defense and 10% skill damage at tier 2. This is honestly great, excellent survivability for a normal damage heavy kit, but it's not quite perfect, as a 10% skill damage wouldn't have quite the effect that the likes of 10% straight damage or 10% normal attack damage would, given his kit is so heavy on normal damage, and it would help increase his survivability this way, but it lands at a solid B+ overall. Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, where we cover commanders in the meta and whether or not they're booms or busts relative to their pre-release expectations. In today's video, we have Nevsky and YSS. First, Nevsky is definitionally a huge boom. There was good excitement for him on release, but his sheer impact on the meta cannot be understated. Even long after his release, he is definitionally the cavalry commander. And even now, I don't see that changing. He is, and always will be, the definition of what a hit commander is in the meta. Next, we have YSS, who similarly has quietly been a huge boom. While he isn't the best commander in the meta, his central spot in the meta has been extremely long-lived, longer than many would have ever thought he would be central to the meta for, and even now is a must-have in the secondary defense and temporary swaps for leaders. And with versatility that is really only matched by other leadership garrisons, YSS will forever be that first crazy garrison lead. Here's where Lapulapu will most be able to shine in Rise of Kingdoms. With the release of Lapulapu, we have a huge divisive range of opinions. While some think he's great, others believe he's too weak. So today's video we're going to go over where he's most able to meet the optimistic half of this assessment. First, to contextualize where his strengths are, you can see looking at his kit that he has huge damage, further boosted by passive skill damage boosts, allowing him to put out crazy damage and allow his secondary commander to do the same. Because of this, alongside his skill tree, he excels at burst and sustained damage 1v1. To make him shine, you'll want to lean into that. So you want to maximize his generally weak swarm resistance by maximizing defense size and minimizing the enemy area to attack. With these, the best spots are passes and forts, and passes particularly because it limits the number of attackers while giving a 3 million capacity, leading to huge defensive capabilities and the best overall feeling of his potential. Being slipped into the next last update was Wu Zetian becoming the next commander to get a relic. So let's review her relic. The relic stats give 15% attack and 5% skill damage, which is relatively underwhelming for a museum relic as is. In the end, you're taking a 15% attack buff to a commander that has a 1000 damage factor skill, alongside a 5% skill damage boost, which again does not really help a 1000 skill damage factor skill, and it does not even meet the weaker levels of Garrison defenses in terms of damage output. It would not even meet the buff, the skill damage and shield that Heracles does on an AoE, let alone a single target skill. Add on a kit that desperately needed some kind of normal damage reduction, especially in the swarm heavy meta, and an outright damage reduction that you could have used to help her survive, and you have a very underwhelming and ill-suited relic, getting a measly C- from me. Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, where we take two commanders and compare them to their pre-release expectations to determine if they're booms or busts. In this video we have William and Huo. First, William is quietly a boom commander. While he hasn't met with a ton of fanfare on his release, he's quietly cemented his legacy as a free-to-play friendly support commander, with skills that are quietly towards the top in terms of providing support to allies, making him one of the sneaky best options for KvK commanders in free-to-plays. Next, Huo is a very slight bust. On release, he was hailed as a Nevsky 2.0, and while skills are certainly great for the field, he just hasn't translated that field success to rallies or garrisons, making him fairly one-dimensional that is far from the Nevsky 2.0 that he was received as when his commander release was given.